Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our May 2022 member call. Today's topic is accessing inclusion and how to improve the accessibility at your events. So this is just an overview of our team. For those of you who might not be familiar with us, we are a fully remote team. So we have team members all across the globe. Ray is in Portugal right now. I believe he's still there. Sarah's in Guatemala City. I'm currently in Mexico. We have members in Canada and the US. So if you have any questions or need any advice on how to manage and run a remote team, certainly feel free to reach out to us. A little bit more about us. We do our work in two sort of primary buckets. We have our membership community, which of course, most people here I would assume are familiar with. With that, we are a global membership community of impact-focused, purpose-focused conveners. And what we mean by conveners is anyone who is passionate about bringing people together to accomplish some form of positive impact or positive change. So we work with other nonprofits, we have impact accelerators, we have professional consulting services. As long as you're passionate about bringing people together, this is the space for you. We offer a number of different membership benefits and resources as well, in addition to these member calls. So if you have any questions about that or how to make the most out of your membership, you can feel free to reach out to myself or Sarah. And then our other bucket of work is our advisory services, where we assist other organizations, nonprofits, universities, different corporations on how to achieve their convening goals. This is just a few of our upcoming calls that we have. On May 26th, we have our masterclass on supporting BIPOC founders and how we can do better. So that's a week from today at 1 p.m. Pacific. June 8th, we have our next coffee and tea connection. For those of you who haven't had the opportunity to join one of those yet, it is a just casual, agenda-free gathering where we can all just kind of connect, get to know who's in the membership community a little bit better, and just kind of take a little break from our day. So we'd love to see you guys there if you have the availability. And then on June 16th will be our next member call. We do have an opportunity to lead that call right now. So if you're interested in that, you can certainly reach out to me or to Sarah, and we'll be happy to provide a bit more information on what that looks like. This is just a quick overview of our agenda for today. We have our welcome, which we're doing right now. Then we're going to head into a quick community connection, and then I'll pass things over to Ashton, who is our guest spark today, which is the person who we're all here for. So today, our community connection activity is focused on what is your learning style. So we are a small group here today, so I think we can just kind of do it within the group. I have been thinking about this question since I put it in this slideshow on Tuesday, and I don't have a clear answer. I think for me, my learning style really depends on what it is that I'm learning. There are certain things that I find really helpful to learn more visually, other things that I find I can learn more based on reading and writing. So for me, I kind of bounce between those two, I think, but it depends on what I'm learning. So I will pass it over to Karen, just because you're on my screen right now, if you want to share your learning style.
Unmute yourself, love.
There we go. I was just thinking that as well when you were saying like how you learned, and I think I learned from all of the different ones as well, depending on what I'm learning. I'm definitely more visual than reading and writing, but also I learn by doing as well. So that's it.
And Britta, what about you?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. I think I am somewhere between kinesthetic, actually doing the thing, thinking about like, especially using technology. It's a lot easier for me to kind of just get in there and figure it out myself. And reading and writing, otherwise, when I'm actively engaged in learning something, I typically take pretty copious notes just because that sort of helps me connect to the material. Yeah.
Thank you. Ifioma please correct me if I'm not pronouncing that properly. Nope, I think you're on mute as well, actually.
Oh, yes, it's Ifioma. I'll say I'm a mix of visual and reading and writing. Hello.
Yes, thank you.
Did you get me?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. And Ashton, what about you? What's your learning style?
Yeah, I think I have like a little bit depending on, but I think my top two is visual and kinesthetic. Yeah, those are definitely my top two for sure. That how I think I thrive in those two. Yeah, in my work, which I'll talk about later, it's like auditory by default, but it's not my personal learning style, the strong one anyways.
Nice. And Sarah, last but not least.
I'm definitely learned by doing
Yeah.
100% with my hands specifically. So yeah, thanks, Colin.
Thank you for sharing it. Let me get back to, here we are. So introducing Ashton. Ashton Rodenhiser is our guest spark for today. She is the Chief Creative Officer at Mind's Eye Creative. I think what she's up to is very cool, what she does. I'm going to let her explain it because I'm sure she can do it better than I can. But this are some links to her information. If you'd like to reach out or get in touch after this call, please feel free, and we can share those in the chat a little later as well. So without further ado, I will pass it over to Ashton.
Amazing. Cool. All right. It's so lovely to be here. I don't have a lot of slides, but I'm just going to pull them up and get going with them. So let's see here. All right. I'm going to open my chat as well. I'm going to try to and monitor that as well. Karen is on the call, and Karen it works with me, so I'm so glad to have her supporting me today. I told her to take copious notes because I want to be able to talk about this stuff more. So I do appreciate, I feel like this virtual room today, I feel like you're a little bit of my guinea pigs, so I appreciate that. So I'll talk a little bit more about my work later on and one of the elements here of improving accessibility. But first, just like a quick little bit of information about me. This is just a screenshot of my Twitter. That's where I mostly hang out. So if you want to hear me ramble on about my life and just things in general, and I post a lot of stuff about my work on there as well, that's where you're going to find me. I really like a London fog, which is like an Earl Grey tea latte is like my drink of choice. I also have 3 small children between the ages of almost 4 and 9. And I really love being outside. So those are some just fast and yeah, just some things about me. I took this picture this morning and I thought of this group. I was like, I gotta take this picture so I can show this group this morning. I was driving my kids to school and daycare, and there's a very sharp corner. We have to go down this road, and there was these little baby Canada geese. I don't know if you can see them in the pond, but they were so cute, and I just had to show you today. So there's a little bit, just a little something to make you smile this morning, little baby Canada geese. Like, how could you not smile at these little guys? So guess what? I want to make this as fun as possible, like the best 45 minutes you've ever spent with me ever. So there are prizes along the way. I'm going to ask some questions along the way. And since there's only a few of us, maybe you'll even get more than one prize. So the prizes for today are these fun little emoji stickers that I have. So if you're like stickers, and I also have a dumpster fire magnet that I made. So I made this dumpster fire magnet because of the pandemic, and I have a couple of them left. So I would love to send you some stickers. So please engage with me throughout this session. I'm going to probably go through the information pretty quickly so we can have a chat at the end, but I will be asking questions. So if you win, you'll get a prize. All right. So first thing off is, I would love to know, actually, first question, this is the first question. In the United States, what percentage, and please don't Google it, what percentage of the US population are considered disabled? So you can either unmute yourself or put it in the chat. What percentage of the US population? 20%, we've got a guess from Sarah, 20%, 15%. So pretty good guesses. It's pretty good guesses. Any other guesses we got? All right, 1 and 4. So 25%. So Sarah, you're pretty close. I think you deserve a prize. I think you'll get a prize. So you can message Karen with your information and we'll get you a prize. So 1 in 4 in the United States. I think it's actually 1 in 5 worldwide. Don't quote me on this, but 1 in 4 in the United States are considered disabled. So this is why this topic is so important to have accessibility in our events. And we'll preface all of this workshop by saying, I am absolutely, I told Colin when we talked about this idea, I am absolutely not an expert in accessibility whatsoever. I have just learned things along the way, things that I have experienced. I have, I'll talk about my work in a little bit, but I've listened to 2,000 presentations since I started my work years ago. So after listening to 2,000 presentations, I have definitely learned a lot about how to present well, how to present not so well, and some tips along the way with it when it comes to accessibility. So all that out of the way. Oh yeah, and I was gonna say we can ask questions. Well, maybe those keep questions to the end, but do pop them in the chat. We'll answer them at the end. And there's a good chance I don't know the answer, like I said, because I'm not an expert. So anyways, we'll keep going here. So all right, question or pop quiz question for prize number 2, and do not Google it, is what does the alt stand for in alt text? What does the alt stand for in alt text? And try not to Google it. So you can unmute and shout it out if you want. Oh, Britta's got it. She's won a prize. She's got a prize. You got a prize. How exciting. Alternative text. Alternative text is like a substitute for explaining, or it helps explain what an image is. Alternative text has been available on websites for quite a while, but they're a bit more new when it comes to social media. So here's an example of posting a picture to LinkedIn. So when you post a picture to LinkedIn, you can actually click an alt text button or I think it says describe or something like that. And it will pop up this little window and you type in the alt text. Okay, as well as Twitter. This is an example of a graphic I did just last week. And you can see here, I actually put in the description. So there's 2 different ways to find it on Twitter. I think you can go to edit and then also describe or something like that. Anyways, before you push go on either platforms, it's really important for you to include alt text, very short description of what the graphic is. So this one here, you can see it's a graphic recording of a presentation by Katerina Rivera about the future of work must prioritize disability inclusion. I have a typo in there, but that's okay. I didn't post it yet. So alt text is important, especially when people use, for people who use screen readers. So when it's doing a screen read, if there's no alt text, it can't provide any information on what that graphic is. So if you're posting, if you have your event and you're posting promotional graphics or any graphics from your event, it's really important to include alt text and your website as well as social media. I don't know, Karen, if you can answer this, is there alt text on Instagram?
Yes, there is.
Okay. So you can go and explore that for yourself. Do you have any tips for people about Instagram? I didn't think about it.
Not really. I think not really different than anything else. Just keep it simple, keep it to the main points.
Yeah. Your alt text has to be short because screen readers, a lot of them have like a certain character limit. So you're good. I can't remember what it is, but it's kind of like 2 sentences. Usually I don't do any more than 2 sentences. Okay. If anybody has any other information about alt text, please share it in the chat and we can chat about it at the end. Okay. I forgot to do this. Darn it. I knew I was forgetting to do something. So physical description. So I learned this while I was, I wanted to learn a little bit more about this type of stuff. I attended a conference back last summer about designing, I can't remember what the conference was called. I can share it and call in, and Sarah can share it out in the email that they send out later. But it was about comics. Adapting comics for low vision and blind people. That's what it was. And one thing that they did was physically describe themselves when they introduced themselves. So you'd say, you know, we won't talk about a land acknowledgement and pronouns and stuff today because we just don't have time, but physical description. So I could say, this is how I would introduce myself. Hi, I'm Ashton Rodenhiser, and I am a Caucasian woman with short brown hair with like a little bit of color in it. I'm wearing a white blouse. Behind me is a white wall with purple and teal speech bubbles printed on it. And I'm wearing a purple watch and I'm wearing red lipstick. So that could be a physical description. It's really important to consider this type of thing when you're introducing yourself either like in person or virtually. It's nice to be able to help people understand what it is that you look like so they can kind of form a picture in their mind. So not just for folks that may be blind, but folks that have like limited vision or low vision. So something to kind of just take into consideration. I'd love to hear in the chat if anyone or if anybody wants to shout out if they've ever experienced this or if they've ever done this on like a call or anything. I'd love to hear.
I haven't seen it done like in a virtual event before. It's an interesting idea. I've seen it on Instagram specifically where people describe the photo below the photo. I didn't even know that they had all text on Instagram, so it's interesting.
Okay, yeah. So what about like a physical description of like when you introduce yourself? Has anyone experienced that or tried it out for themselves? I'll take your silence as a no. Oh, Sarah's shaking her head no. So something to take into consideration. It's a bit awkward the first few times that you do it. And like you saw here, I forgot. I meant to do it at the beginning here and I forgot to do it. But just something to take into consideration from an accessibility perspective. ASL, I think most of us know what that stands for, American Sign Language. I won't speak a ton about this, but it's something to consider having for virtual or in-person event, especially if you have a lot of people. And you know, if you're not sure if you require one, you can include it as a question like on your registration form. You know, is this something that you require, yes or no? And then you would know if you need it or not. So it's nice. It's, you know, we'll talk about other options for accessibility here in a second, but it is really valued and beneficial to quite a huge audience that might be at your event. Oh yeah, this was just an example you could see, you saw here, I took a screenshot an event I did back in February, and in the bottom right-hand corner, we've got the interpreter Desiree. So I was actually on there as well. You can see Nisa's graphic recording with a little drawing, and then we had 3 presenters, and then we had the ASL interpreter in a little square as well, which is really cool. Okay. So, okay, so I'll quickly just talk about my work a little bit from an accessibility perspective. So I'm a professional graphic recorder. And what that means is I draw out illustrations most of the time live during conferences, events, and create a visual summary of what just happened, what people just talked about. And from like a learning perspective, it can really be helpful for accessibility. In terms of like folks, different types of like neurodiverse audiences really benefit from graphic recording as well as just the general public, because sometimes it can be really hard to sit through. Sometimes you just physically can't for whatever reason, sit through multiple sessions in a row. The way that you process information, it can help you with the processing of information and allow you to be able to, be able to digest that information at a later time if you can't do it in the moment. So anyways, there's lots of different other different things outside of accessibility, why it's beneficial, but from an accessibility perspective, it can be really helpful for varying audiences. So this is just like a photo that was taken, doing it digitally. And then here you can see, this was actually just last week, I was screenshot. You can see my drawing there in a little square. So when people hear information, they see information, it like when you start like adding in those multiple modalities that we just talked about at the beginning with Colin, it really helps solidify the message. So yeah, from an accessibility, you can consider having something like graphic recording or some sort of like visual representation of the information afterwards for folks. Okay, so captioning. So captioning is really helpful for folks to be able to follow along the conversation. And a lot of tools kind of like Zoom here have different pay tiers where they it's like included, so you can like turn it on and off. And then it also can create like a transcript of it as well. So kind of captions and transcripts, I'll just sort of talk a little just for one more second here very quickly, but this is just like a transcript that came from a Zoom call a while ago. But captions are really important for people to be able to follow along a conversation. If they're deaf or they're low hearing and the ASL isn't available, it's really important. I will just quickly kind of make a comment about AI captioning, which is what you would experience on a Zoom call, and an actual person doing the captioning. So the way that I see it is it's like AI captioning is great, a real person is better. It's like, you know, good and great. Like it's not terrible to have AI captions, but if you have an actual person, it's really nice to have because they're going to like spell things correctly, like people's names, or that like if it's like a medical conference and it's like all these like complicated words or whatever. The English language is very difficult as well as many other languages. So, you know, if you have the opportunity to have an actual like person captioning, I think that would be amazing. But if all you can do is have like the AI captioning through like your Zoom call or whatever, then that's great too. But just something to kind of take into consider, you know, all these things, of course, like a lot of times come down to like budgets and stuff, but I think it's really important. Sometimes I've seen events like they'll do like sponsorships just for captioning and things like that. So something to keep in mind. Okay, audio descriptions. Okay, so ready? Next trivia question for prize. What is one of the largest demographics, or I guess I could say, I want to say career? Is it career? Like group of people. What group of people are outside of like the blind community are the biggest, I want to say digesters of audiobooks? So what group of people outside of the blind community are one of the largest like users of audiobooks? And I learned this at that conference I mentioned earlier. The elderly. It's possible.
What about like people whose language is a second language for them?
Probably all these answers are probably right. I'm looking for a very obscure one that you probably no one will get. That's why it's tricky. All right, do you want to know? Drum roll. Truck drivers. Truck drivers apparently, according to that conference I went to, unless they made it up, are one of the largest users of audiobooks. And now that I've said it, does that totally not make sense? Totally makes sense. Like think about all those hours, like how many times can you listen to, you know, I've walked 5,000 miles. Like how many times can you listen to that song, right? So nobody got it, no prize, but we'll figure out prizes later. We'll get everybody a prize. Okay, so audio descriptions are really important as well to help describe visuals. Think about it as like an elevated opportunity, like beyond alt text. Like alt text is great, but if you can add an audio description to something, whether it's a video or a photo, it's even better to give the opportunity to describe it even more. Now, I don't know personally a lot about described audio, which is a little bit different than audio descriptions in my world, but described audio is like when you if you've ever seen like on TV or whatever, and there's like options in Netflix in it, like we'll describe, like let's say it's a drone going over a lake and there's like no one's talking. It will say like drone, like picturesque scene of a lake with trees around it or something like that. So that could be like a form of this, but not specifically what I'm talking about. But you could do that if you were like posting videos of things later and stuff like that, something to consider depending on what kind of content you're putting out. So I actually started doing this for all of the graphic recordings that I do from here on out, is include an audio description of all the graphics. This is an example. How long is it? It's 40 seconds. I probably won't play the whole thing. I'll just give you, okay, I'm gonna play it. You tell me if you can hear it.
Graphic recording of presentation titled, Meet Them Where They Are, Connecting Urban Farming Through Unconventional Methods by Natasha Nichols at the Chicago Food Justice Summit. The drawing is completed in blue, green, yellow, and orange. The speaker discusses their journey on starting to grow their own food and founding the organization We Sow, We Grow. Some drawings to highlight are some diverse faces, a smiley face apple, a large smiley carrot, a globe with carrots growing.
Okay. So you can kind of get a sense of what that looks like. So I've just decided to do this for every single graphic, which has added another layer of, I don't say complexity, but just another layer to the work that I do when I create these drawings. And I've just decided like across the board to include it with every single one. I almost made a choice recently, I guess 2 months ago, where I was working with a gentleman, and he just has like, he does these, this training on like planned giving and like talking to people about how to leave, like how organizations can talk to their donors about leaving them in their will. It's a very niche business. And so he's contracted me to do 15 drawings throughout the year for him out of his sessions. And I thought, well, he only has a handful of people. Like, do I really need to do the audio description? And when I mentioned it to him, he was like, oh my gosh, I have someone who will really, really benefit from this. You know, and when I send him the graphic, he's always like, I need audio. I'm like, just wait, I need some turnaround time for the audio. Just give me some turnaround time. But it's, you know, so we don't want to make a judgment depending on how large or small the group is. Most people, especially in the workplace, don't just disclose that they're disabled. So you don't even necessarily know how many people are around you or are attending your event that will tell you that they, you know, have some sort of disability or differing abilities. So, it was just a bit of a side note about that, but there's just an example for you to kind of take into consideration. I won't talk much about websites here. I am not an expert, but I think one of the most important things to think about for your website is to design it with inclusivity in mind now, or accessibility in mind. Do not go to my website and use it as an example because it's not a great example. But I am talking with someone right now to help make it more accessible. Now, what this person told me was, because I asked them about those, I'm not sure if you've ever seen those websites where you can like put a plugin and it will like, it has like a little person on it and you click the button and then it will change things on the website to make it more accessible. Like it might increase the font or change like the color or something like that. Now, what this person told me was if your website isn't set up to be accessible from the beginning, those plugins are totally useless. And I experienced that. I played around the next website that I came across. I played around with it and I was like, yeah, I don't really know how accessible this really is because the design of this website is poor. So I would suggest that you just talk to somebody who is a specialist in accessible websites and making sure that you have things like set up on your website to make it accessible. There's like laws coming out around that. I've even heard some companies have been sued because their website's not accessible. And I think this was in the United States. So something to just kind of take into consideration but I don't really have a whole lot of advice. Unfortunately, there is this website, and Karen, you can actually, if you wouldn't mind going into our stuff and finding this website and just posting in the chat for everybody. But there is this W3C, I think is like the biggest or the most common website that talks about accessible websites, and on this page even talks about like alt text and stuff like that. So just to kind of put it out there, if we're talking about events, you really want to make sure your event website is accessible, especially if you're taking registration and stuff on it. Okay, that's it. That's all I have. I did have one thing that didn't make it in here. Because I forgot about it, so I'll use it as a quiz. All right, so quiz for a prize, or a question for a prize, trivia question. From an accessibility perspective, why is it important for you to have your camera on during like a virtual call like this? From an accessibility perspective, why is it important to have your video on? You can shout out or you can post it in the chat.
Be people who rely on like lip reading and
yes, you got it. Prize for you.
I know that was a big issue with masks. That's why it's
yes, lip reading. I hadn't necessarily thought about this, but I actually did an accessibility conference last week, and they talked about that, and I thought I was like, yeah, that totally makes sense, So yeah, lip reading, especially if you don't have the luxury of captions or whatever. Having your camera on is helpful for lip reading for sure. All right, so I think that's all I have. Oh yeah, so I compiled, so maybe this is like a little bit meta. I did a graphic recording of this presentation that I just went through. So you can see here, I just highlighted all the things that I just mentioned, as well as like one little note per thing, so alt text, we wanted that on every photo, transcripts to accompany all audio, like podcasts and everything. We want to have transcripts. Consider introducing yourself, have a physical description of yourself when you introduce yourself in a virtual meeting. Consider having audio descriptions that describe photos or videos. I did want to mention, I talked about video, but YouTube videos as well have like a transcript captioning thing. It's really important that you don't just go click, yes, I want captions, and then move on. You really would be great if you have the time to go back and actually go through the video captions and make sure they're accurate. It's going to pick up things that are wrong, even though it says it's right and all that, names of people and all of that stuff. So just a little side note I wanted to mention there. Captioning is always really important to accompany audio. Website, incorporate accessibility into your design from the start. Consider having something like what I do is like graphic recording or visual representations of information. And then also consider American Sign Language and include it on your registration form if that's something that they need. So that's it. That's all I have. So I would love just to have a chit chat, answer any questions. I will send this graphic out to Colin and Sarah, and you can share it out with everybody who is here today, as well as folks that are going to check out the recording after. So yeah. So I'd love just to have a chat for the rest of our time here. answer any questions, just sort of chat about maybe if there's things that you've done from an accessibility perspective that you think would be really helpful for others to learn.
I'm curious from like a planning perspective. If you're, let's say, planning an event and resources like budget are an issue, and you're kind of needing to decide between what accessibility initiatives you want to kind of plan and work into your event. Is it appropriate to gather any information of your participants in advance with regards to accommodations they might need, or is that not appropriate? You know what I mean? Are these questions you don't want to be asking people to share information that they're not comfortable sharing, but in the interest of kind of providing what they need, kind of where is the line there?
That's a great question. And I think it's something to navigate. I think it's one of those things where when you avoid talking about something, then it makes it almost seem like you're not being inclusive or accessible. So even though it might feel awkward, like, like the disabled community or the community of people who are disabled, like they don't mind, from what I've heard, you saying like deaf, blind, disabled, like those are words that I find us who are more able-bodied are uncomfortable to talk about, but it's not necessarily the case for them because, and of course it's difficult for me to speak on their behalf, but I'm just saying what I have personally experienced doing events that have these types of things to support their audience and their participants, but then also listening to presentations on accessibility. So I have encountered quite a few events that on a registration form, because I would have to fill it out as well, and they would just give me like a code because that's how I'd access the event. They would ask things like, do you require American Sign Language? I think as long as you don't make those, like, when you have like on Eventbrite or whatever, and it's like a little asterisk and you have to say yes or no, maybe make those like not required fields so that people can skip them. But I think, I think it would be great because then if nobody says yes, if you've given everybody the opportunity to say yes, I require, or no, I don't require American Sign Language, then you can go from there. Like if you're doing a small meeting and there's 10 people, and maybe them and they don't require American Sign Language. But if it's like 100 people and you're not sure who's going to be in the room, and everybody says no, then you're good. But yeah, you could also like, put questions in there about like captionings or transcripts. Do you require those things as well? Or, just like you would ask somebody in a, their food preferences, like, are you allergic to anything? Like, are you a vegan or whatever? I think it's appropriate to ask those questions because then you'll be able to know your audience a little bit better as well, right? And I think it's just good practice to do some of these things anyways. But obviously there's things like ASL and if you have like an actual person captioning, there's like can be significant cost depending on the size of your event, right? That you just haven't budgeted for. And if you can't like secure a sponsor or something to do just that, to sponsor that specific piece. But I think it's just like good practice to do things that are really easy, like physical descriptions and alt text and even audio descriptions. If you can, if there's a volunteer or somebody on your team that, can do something like that, spend a few hours after the event editing those things up or whatever, start with like the low hanging fruit first for sure. And then kind of add in some of those more things that kind of have like a cost to it. But anyways, very long-winded answer to your questions. I think it's appropriate. I think it's okay to ask because it's also showing like when I see those questions, I go, oh, sweet, these folks care about accessibility. That's what I see from my lens when I see those questions.
I was just curious, Ashton, I've done events for done registration forms for events, and definitely asked that question exactly as you kind of described. We've done it open-ended, where we're not like specifically asking, do you need ASL, do you need captions, do you need this? We're requiring any accommodations, just generally, and kind of letting them fill in their needs. I'm curious, I've just, heard you say disabled. Is that the term that we should be utilizing, or do you, I mean, you don't have to have the perfect answer here. I'm just curious what, talking about our discomfort with saying blind, deaf, whatever. But that community is obviously, that's their world. So I've always struggled with what verbiage to kind of use to describe that.
That's a great question. I'm going to see if I can pull up a graphic here that I did of something recently. I would ask you to do it, Karen, but I can't remember what the event.
Sorry, not to put you on the spot. I was just
So
thinking.
there's first person language. Let me think about this. Can I find it?
Or you can come back to it too.
Yeah, no, I want to answer this question because it's really important. Oh, maybe it was this one. I did 711 presentations last year.
Oh my gosh.
So, I found it. Isn't that amazing?
You're good.
I found it. I am so impressed. Okay. So I am going to share this. So this was a presentation that I did. Oh, Chicago Food Summit. They're getting a lot of love during this presentation. I highlighted them a couple of times. Okay, so this person, Julie, they talked about disability justice as a framework for food justice movement, which was really interesting. So I think what I hear as like a kind of umbrella thing is that every, how do I put this? We all are one thing happening to us away from being disabled ourselves, right? Like we could get in a car accident tomorrow and be in a wheelchair like for the rest of our lives, right? Like, or there's like temporary being disabled, like temporarily, like if you broke your arm, right? So I think like for me, what I took away a little bit from this presentation was there's identity first language, and then there's person first language. And everybody, from what I hear, has a different preference. Okay, so identity first language is a disabled person, and a person first language is a person with a disability. Right. So this doesn't necessarily answer your question specifically, but it made me think about it because, like if you hear someone go, especially if you know that they're disabled themselves and they say, hi, or I'm not sure what it would be, but blah, 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 that person who has a disability, then you go in your mind like, oh, they prefer, or you could even just ask them, do you prefer person first language or identity first language? Right. I always felt like identity first language was rude because you're like naming the thing about them before they're a person instead of like, I'm a person first. And then I also just happen to have a disability. That's the way I've always looked at it. So I tend to use person first language. Identity first language makes me feel a little uncomfortable just because of my own personal philosophy around it. But some folks that are disabled, like, they don't mind, or they have a preference for that. I think it's one of those things like if you recognize your own, like everybody who is not disabled, like there's a certain amount of like ableism, right? Like there's like certain privileges that we have because we don't have a disability. And the way that I look at it is like, if I'm moving in the world, recognizing those different privileges that I have, it allows me to be more, like the reason why I wanted to do this session today is like almost like as an ally. Like I am an able-bodied person. I know I could become disabled at any moment. What can I do to help support this community so that they get the resources that they need? So from what I've experienced, using the word disabled is fine. I think it's just a matter of like how you want to frame it, identity first or person first language. Is that helpful? Hopefully.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful.
Okay.
I hadn't heard those terms before. I mean, I encountered, you know, the various ways of describing it, but that's interesting. Thank you.
Awesome. Sarah, what is the most creative way you've seen inclusion for folks at events? And for virtual convenings, what are some of your favorite tools or apps for creating more accessibility? Oh my goodness, this is a big question, Sarah. That's a big question. Creative way you've seen inclusion for folks for virtual convening. I'm just gonna, okay, I don't know. I don't know. There could be so many things here, but maybe I'll get back to you. I don't know. I want to just have a scapegoat and be like, they hire me and I make it creative for them. Because it's great. But that's a cop-out. So I think one thing that I was impressed for an event, it was back in the fall, they didn't have American Sign Language, but one of the speakers brought their own American Sign Language interpreter. And I thought that was like pretty cool. I was like, whoa, I've never seen that before. Like this person obviously feels like it's that important that they brought their own person in, right? So I thought that was really cool. So I think there's like part of the things that like, I love the fact that that speaker took on that responsibility for themselves if the event isn't doing it. And I believe that speakers should be advocates for their audience, and they should be asking those questions to the event organizers. And if the event doesn't have what they feel like should be included when it comes to accessibility, that they should do things like that. You know, like obviously there's budgets and there's stuff and there's all this stuff, right? But you know, I thought that was really, I've never really seen a whole lot of that kind of stuff of the speaker taking responsibility for the accessibility piece. I thought that was pretty cool. There's one event that I've done a few times, and they do this thing where you can like make GIFs of yourself, and then everyone posts like a GIF of their like saying like, hi, good morning, drinking their coffee. I love that. I just think it's like such a fun way to engage with people, especially like first thing in the morning, is like making like a silly like GIF of yourself. Anyways, as long as you include some like maybe alt text with it, then you'll be all right. I think the way I think about like alt text is like, why would you want to leave someone out of the joke? Oh, one thing I do want to mention is describing images on slides. So if you have a slide deck, it's important to describe the image, especially if it's really complicated. You know, if it's a graph or something like that. I think it's important to just like, if you're like, so maybe you can pass this along to speakers, but try to encourage them to actually describe the image. You know, think about like I do a lot of like tech events, and they like love memes and stuff. And like, think about being in a presentation, and all of a sudden everyone's like laughing and you don't know why, because the person didn't explain what the meme was, right? And maybe someone has described to you before, so you know what it is. So it's like an inside joke, and that now you've been left out of it, right? What are some of your favorite tools or apps for creating more accessibility for folks? Virtual convening. I'm gonna think about that one as well. I don't know if I have any favorite tools or apps. Karen, if you have any, if you've seen anything that I've done.
I was just trying to think about that as well. I don't, other than us making the videos, like with adding the headliner app, just adding the
oh, the audio description.
Yeah, adding the audio descriptions to an image, but it just depends on what.
Yeah, I guess those audio descriptions also have like the captioning, so it's like that one's a bit of a double whammy. I didn't mention that, but tools or apps. I think just being mindful of like the AI versus a real person. you know, to be honest with you, because I think like there's so many great things out there, like Zoom having captions and transcripts and all of that stuff is really great.
And then just with your social media, sorry, didn't want to interrupt, but
No, go
just with
ahead.
just with the social media, adding your descriptions, because Twitter has it, Instagram has it, I think Facebook does, just describing any pictures that you post.
Yeah, I think like, you know, in terms of like favorite tools or apps, I think just like keep it simple.
Mm.
You know, just like keep it really simple. And like now, you know, every single time you post a picture, you just write a short alt description, right? Alt text to it. You know, the way that I've sort of been approaching it, like within my business, is I'm just going to do it until people tell me I'm doing it wrong, and then I'll change it, right? I'll edit it along the way, but I'm like, I got to start somewhere. I got to make the mistakes. I have to tell people, like, I have to do it so that people tell me that I can do it better. You know what I mean? So I think if you like have like an open mind when it comes to like learning about this type of stuff, I think that you're already like halfway there, right? You just start. And then like I had someone private message me at an event and suggest that, or tell me about a graphic that didn't resonate with them because of like Indigenous stuff. And I was like, I draw this thing all the time. Oh my gosh, I never thought about that before. So I changed the graphic right away. But now I'm like, that was such an education for me. Like I have to be open to that kind of stuff, right? It's like if someone says like, this didn't work for me, or like I was offended by this, or this wasn't like, you know, captioning was available for these, but then not for these sessions, like that kind of sucked. Like if you also kind of like put yourself out there as an event and be like, we're working on this and we know we're not doing it perfectly and we would love your feedback on it, I think that would be like amazing. Yeah, so that didn't really answer your question. I'm really sorry. Just a ramble a bit. Anything else? No other questions? Private message Karen. Everybody private message Karen with your mailing address. And
I got them all already.
Did you? Everybody?
Yep.
It better be everybody, because even though I was trying to think of more trivia questions, I wrote the trivia questions quickly down on my my thing, but I was like, I wish I had more. I need to have more trivia questions. Yeah, I guess one last opportunity for questions, or just like a chit chat, or if anyone, like, I'm an open book about all of my stuff. So if anybody has any questions about me or what I'm doing over here or anything like that, I'd love to hear it. Come on, be nosy, people, be nosy. I love it. No burning desire? No question. You really want to know? What's everyone doing this weekend? We got 5 minutes. I'm going camping. I'm going first camping trip of the season. I'm going camping. I would love to know what everyone's doing this weekend. What's happening?
Warm.
What are you doing, Karen?
I have no idea yet.
No idea. That's okay. Just chill.
I'm
Just
jealous
chill.
of you camping though. Totally.
Plant flowers. Get your flowers going.
Oh, well, they're all going anyway.
They're going.
They're going.
Karen's got a side hustle of a flower farm.
Trying to.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
We're going to the beach.
Woohoo!
Nice.
Well, where are you again? You're in somewhere that's always sunny. Oh yeah, Guatemala.
Yeah.
Always
Guatemala.
sunny. Amazing.
Nice.
Awesome.
I'm moving to a new Airbnb for our last week and a half in Mexico. We currently
Nice.
are kind of in the middle of nowhere. there's people around, but there's not anything to do. So it's a good like 25-minute walk to get anywhere, which is fine. But yeah, we decided for our last week and a half, we're going to go somewhere closer to where the beach is and where there are more things to do. So that'll be nice.
That's awesome. What about you, Britta?
I have no idea.
Just chilling out, just relaxing. Or it's my oldest daughter. She was like, why do adults like being bored? And I'm like, it's called relaxing. It's not being bored.
Kids are funny.
What about you, Ifoma? Are you doing anything exciting this weekend? Thinking about it? She's thinking about it. She's thinking about it. Awesome. Well, so Colin, you're gonna, oh, sorry, Ifoma, did you want to share? You're unmuted now.
Nothing too interesting this weekend.
No, just chilling. Okay, cool. I hope this was helpful. I don't know, Colin and Sarah, do you like send out a survey or anything? Or if anybody has any feedback for me, I would love to hear it. So what I'm going to promise is Karen's going to pass me over your mailing addresses, and I'll send you a little thing in the mail. And I'll also, Sarah and Colin, I'll also send you that graphic recording that sort of summarizes the session that you can send out to everybody. Is there anything else? Did I commit to anything else? I think that's it.
I think we're good.
If you want the slides, I don't know if they're helpful because I talked through most of it.
You can send them. I do think with the graphic, it has all the like talking points on it, but you can certainly send them. I mean, and I'll send them off to TJ, who does our email marketing, and he can decide what he thinks is best in terms of the reach.
Yeah, and include my email in the follow-up as well, or whatever you want to do, and so people can get in touch. Encourage people to get in touch with me if they'd like.
Sure thing. Yeah. So, well, thank you very much. Thank you to Ashton for being here and for sharing her expertise with us, and to everyone else for joining and for participating in the discussion. I look forward to receiving my prize. And yeah, so
I'll send one of each. I'll send one of each.
Okay. Well, we might end up fighting over the dumpster fires, I think, if we don't.
I know. I've got enough for everybody. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks, everybody. With that, we'll wrap it up. I hope everybody has a great rest of your day, and you'll get the recap from us. If you have any feedback or anything, please feel free to reach out.
Thanks, Colin.
Thanks.
Awesome.